Hi, this is Catherine Schneider from the Fitchburg Historical Society, and we are so happy today to have as our guest Eileen Kellor, who is a Fitchburg Historical Society board member. So welcome, Eileen.
Thank you.
And today we get to promote the fall program for the Fitchburg Historical Society. Could you tell us when the program is going to be, the title of the program, the dates, the place, and who's invited?
Absolutely. So our fall program will be Sunday, October 15th at 1:30 p.m. in the upstairs room at the Fitchburg Public Library, and that address is 5530 Lacey Road. The title is Swan Creek Sewing Circle, 100 Years of Neighborliness, and it's featuring a very long-standing women's organization in Fitchburg called the Swan Creek Sewing Circle, which I like to tell people is currently similar to a book club in that it's a reason to meet, but we don't sew. Anyone and everyone is invited. I've done a similar presentation to some women's groups that are associated with quilting or sewing, and the focus of that has been on how groups of women join and how common interests come together and help women form social relationships. But this one will be slightly different. It'll be focused more on the connection of these women in this group to Fitchburg and some of the enduring elements that have continued. I think the reason it would be interesting to anyone, even if you're not from Fitchburg, is that similar kinds of organizations existed elsewhere. And it may be that you had a grandparent or a great-grandparent or your own mother who had a similar kind of affiliation and affinity with a group, that bunch of women basically supporting each other.
Wonderful. And to think that this group is still in existence after all these years, which is truly amazing.
It is. It has. We have minutes starting from the very first meeting on December 1st, 1915, with very few gaps in the actual minutes. A few are in shorthand, so we currently can't translate them because we don't speak shorthand. But there's a really amazing preservation of history of the organization that's been maintained throughout the 108 years that it's been in existence.
Amazing. And so maybe without giving away too many details, because we want people to come to the program and enjoy it, could you maybe share some highlights about what will be featured in the program?
Be happy to. So one of the highlights that I think when I've gone through the minutes of the meetings and looked at information, I've been struck with how the group kept adapting to the current world. So when it first started, 1915 was very different than 1940 or 1945. One of the most interesting things that as a current Fitchburg resident I found in old minutes was that at one point they discussed the school systems and had conversations on what did they think should happen with the school system. Should they, remain one-room schools? So they weren't just social. They were an opportunity for people to actually talk about current events and be social. Another element that I find interesting and that I think will be, it'll be interesting to people is how inclusive and intentionally inclusive the group was. That these were they were all rural women. They came from generally farming families. Maybe there was some other, commerce or whatever, but basically farming, and financial circumstances weren't great for most of them. So they had some very clear guidelines on who and what. They capped membership so that it wouldn't become too much of a burden for the hostess. They put limits on how many dishes you could serve at an event, so there wouldn't be competition of, so-and-so. And the other part that I think is really striking is that at a time where, in many cases, religious affiliation was a way that people associated, you might, being ecumenical was just not a thing. This group had women from different religious beliefs, and that was not a barrier to inclusion. So that has struck me that I think they recognize that in order to continue to exist and be part of a community, they had to be welcoming.
So truly a community organization.
Very much so. Started with the premise of Swan Creek School and that little environ, and then as time went on and maybe membership changed or they needed or grew members, they would expand it. But there was always an intention to be within a certain community.
Well, why do you think the Fitchburg Historical Society decided to choose this particular topic for its program this fall?
The idea was brought up by Tom Hovell, who is a former city planner. So as a board member, we all mull over and ask, what do we think would be interesting? And, who do we have expertise on? And who could we talk about this? And Tom mentioned this as an organization that has a long presence in Fitchburg and thought that it would be an interesting topic for us to share. I agreed, and Carol Kinney agreed, who's also a board member and Swan Creek member, because we think this is an important part of Fitchburg's history. Fitchburg doesn't have a lot of tangible structures. We were agricultural. We don't have many historical buildings, but we still have historical elements. And Swan Creek is one that is clearly a historical element, and it's still in existence. So I think we believed that it would be of interest to current Fitchburg members, citizens, and just others in the area to learn how a group like this has continued to survive and why it continues to exist.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And from your own experience, because you belong to the Swan Creek Sewing Circle, what do you consider to be the value of community-based social organizations?
I thought this was a really good question because community has so many different meanings. And in this case, community is a community of people who had their origins in this certain area of Fitchburg and town if done. But like many other community organizations, it's a way that you can connect with your neighbors. It's a way that if you're a newcomer, you can learn about your community. It can help provide a sense of groundedness of where you are. So whether you came to Fitchburg 50 years ago, or whether you came to Fitchburg 5 years ago, or like me, was born in Fitchburg, left and came back, there's still an identity that you can connect with. And a community organization, because it is not associated with a set of dogma or doctrines, it's different. It's people who are in a community. It isn't a church or a school. So it's also available to people who maybe don't have children and don't have a school connection or don't have a religious belief and don't belong to a church. So community organizations have a place in providing a way for people to gather and form relationships.
Mm-hmm. And relationships are what community is about, aren't
Yes,
they?
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Well, another aspect I'd like to ask you about today, Eileen, is actually has to do with community also, and that is that continuing display in the Fitchburg Public Library that you put together for the Fitchburg Historical Society. I wonder if you could just describe that display for everyone and just, I think, to encourage them to come and enjoy that display and learn from it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So the display we currently have in the Fitchburg Library is in the Fitchburg room at the library. It is the centerpiece of it is a plat map, which for those who may not be familiar with it, a plat map basically is a map that shows the different plats in a township, in this case the city of Fitchburg. And we have identified on it the current boundaries for the Oregon, Madison, and Verona school districts. We've identified on it all the locations of the 12 different one-room schoolhouses that existed in Fitchburg, some of them as late as the early 1960s. We've identified where the current public schools are located in Fitchburg. And we've been fortunate to be able to provide some actual ephemera or artifacts from at least 8 of the schools. So the purpose of this display was twofold. One is to really illustrate the history of schools in Fitchburg. The other is to provide an opportunity for people to talk about their own school experience. So again, we talk about grandparents, great-grandparents. We talk about people coming from rural communities versus urban communities. A one-room schoolhouse is something that still exists in this world and has existed and will probably continue to exist. So there may still be people who have that as part of their experience. We think that this display is potentially useful to teachers, to anybody who has an interest in education systems, because it's a really good visual representation of how a rural community educated its students and how, as those population centers changed and as the forces of technology and others came into being, that those schools identities changed and became part of a larger district. So it may seem like, I'm not from Fitchburg and I never went to a one-room schoolhouse, but we've found from people who have viewed it that they've really found it to be a good starting point to reminisce about their own experiences or things. The weekly reader, how many of us had a weekly reader? Well, the kids in one-room schoolhouses had it. In fact, we have one of yours in there, Catherine.
Yes, we do.
So, yeah. So we really welcome people to come look at it, and we do expect that it will be up there. The part that I find what was really kind of fun in that is that I learned that Dane County has a Dane County song that if you go up to the display, you can see it.
Who would have known?
Who would have known?
Unless you had done
Exactly.
the research on it.
Exactly.
Well, it's an extremely attractive display and so informative. Just being able to look at the display and find out so much about education in Fitchburg from the past, and then how it has evolved into what it is today. Well, thank you for explaining that so
I'm happy
thoroughly
to. Thank
for
you.
us. Finally, Eileen, I'm wondering if you would like to talk about the aspects of the Fitchburg Historical Society's mission that you might like to emphasize for the public today.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Our mission, our stated mission for the Fitchburg Historical Society is history, is yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So I think that many people, when they think about a historical society, especially when you're not from that community, you think about a bunch of people getting together and talking about old times. You know, look at this building that we used to have, or, you know, look at this yearbook from such and such. And that's fabulous. But history is also today, and it's also tomorrow. So capturing the current information within the city of Fitchburg has been a really important aspect of the Historical Society as long as I've been a member and been aware of it. And also taking steps to retain that, make that an ongoing practice so that 5 years from now, whoever's on our current board will know that our mission is to not just look backwards, but to capture what's going on now. And I think that that's an element for individuals who might be reluctant to join a group like ours because they're not from here. Well, if you're here, you are from here, and we would love to have you involved in informing our future and maintaining our current information, and also helping to pass along the information that has come up to Fitchburg up until this day. So it's a wonderful resources on the website. We don't have a physical presence to speak of, but that's okay, because then you can participate from the beauty of your own home and on your iPad and look at many YouTube videos and presentations and read articles that are on the website that, again, may relate to Fitchburg, but may also then relate to some other experience that you've had or your family have had elsewhere. And it's very affordable, $10 individual membership, so I think I have that right, Catherine.
You do.
Okay.
You do. Absolutely, you do. And I'll just make sure everyone knows that the website is fitchburghistory.org, and people are so welcome to just go to that site anytime, and the many things you've talked about that are on that site, as well as our programming. And so that brings us back full circle to just remind people about our program again. And if you would just repeat those details
Absolutely.
again. Eileen.
So it's our fall program, Sunday, October 15th at 1:30 p.m. The Swan Creek Sewing Circle, 100 Years of Neighborliness, although it's really 108, at the Fitchburg Public Library, 5530 Lacey Road. One thing I didn't mention, and this is really important, is that the dessert at these meetings has been very much an important element of the meeting. So the Sewing Circle will be providing a dessert in the spirit of neighborliness and in continuing our traditions.
Wonderful. What more could you want? A wonderful program celebrating the Swan Creek Sewing Circle, 108 years of existence, and a dessert to top it off. So we just encourage everyone to come and enjoy the afternoon with us together on October 15th. Thank you so much,
Thank
Eileen,
you.
for being with us today.
I'm happy to. Thank you for the opportunity.